Okay, this week, week 10, we're looking at communication between non-human animals. This is still part of the textbook, but it's only included in the online version, so you can access that chapter through eClass. In this video, as usual, I will recap last week, give an overview of the material from this week, and remind you about stuff that's coming up in the schedule. So last week, we looked at writing. It's also different from normal spoken human language, but in a very different way from this week's material. The practice quiz is up for that topic, so make sure you give it a try. Right, so this week. Now, linguistics is generally defined to exclude the communication of non-human animals. And this is entirely sensible, works really well, both from an empirical point of view, because human language is different from non-human language, and from a pragmatic one. But it's also true that humans are part of the animal kingdom, recently evolved in a somewhat different direction from our primate cousins, but overall we share a great deal physically and mentally with other animals. So it's worth spending some time looking at how human communication systems fit in with the communication systems used by other animals. So as we begin to compare human languages to non-human communication systems, we need to distinguish between the medium and the structure. So first we look at the medium of communication. Human languages are all based on one or both of two things: vocalization and gesture. Right? And as seen in most sign languages, gesture in human language encompasses moving and shaping the hands, and also a systematic use of facial expressions. Vocalization and gesture are also used by other animals to communicate, and so are a whole bunch of other things like scent, light, electricity, coloring, and posture. The textbook has really cute examples of each of these being used to convey information between animals. Right, so next we move on to a taxonomy of different aspects of communication, considered as broadly as possible. So in order to be communication, a behavior has to give information about something without using that thing, right? So we want to signify something using something else. And so we use the term sign to refer to this relationship, and a sign connects a signifier with something that is signified. The textbook gives the example of the word tree. The signifier is the word tree, that pronunciation, which we use to indicate the meaning. Note that we can get even more specific. Every time someone says the word tree, that's a new event. They're similar to each other, but they're not identical. So each instance of someone using a signifier is called a token. So when I say tree, there's a token. If I say tree again, there's another token. But it's the same signifier, the same word. The signified is the thing itself, the actual tree out there. After this section, we get into the three types of signs that we encounter: iconic, indexical, and symbolic. And they're roughly three different levels of abstraction. An icon directly resembles the thing it signifies in some salient way. An index is associated with the thing it signifies in some physically identifiable way, but it may not directly resemble it. And a particular type of index that we're shown is a symptomatic sign, which naturally includes the medical sort of symptom, right, such as a fever that indicates an infection, but it can also include other cause-effect pairings, like a smile signaling pleasure, or a wince signaling pain. And then, so that was, we did icons and index. A symbol is connected to the thing it signifies, but only arbitrarily, right? Most of human language is symbolic. The only reason tree means that woody thing is because that's how we use it in English, right? That pronunciation has no actual connection to the meaning outside of the convention of that's how we use it. The book points out that signs can be a mixture of more than one of these types. We also get the term signal. So you can think of a traffic signal, which directs driving behavior. A communicative signal is a sign of any of those sorts that causes the observers to behave in a certain way. Next up, we look at whether signs are graded or discrete. The elements of human language that we study, the ones we study most, are discrete or categorical: phonemes, words, phrases. Okay, and then our taxonomy of types of communication is wrapped up with an overview of communication by non-human animals. And then we get to learn about some specific non-human communication systems, covering their particular properties and relating them to the properties of human communication. We learn about the dances of bees, which communicate about where honey can be found. We learn about bird vocalizations, including the distinction between a call and a song, and the concept of avian dialects, which I've managed to observe. I've lived in 2 continents that have magpies, biologically similar magpies, and their calls are identifiably distinct. And then we get into some other primates, some non-human primates: lemurs, various monkeys, and even our closest cousins, the chimpanzees. So after that delightful whirlwind overview, we get a tour through some of the ways that animals, and especially chimpanzees, have been tested for language ability. And without rehashing all the details here, the textbook builds up to the point where it can address the question that drives a lot of this work: does any non-human animal have the capacity to use language like humans do? And in order to prevent any answer from simply being driven by our preconceptions and our biases, we're given a set of 13 features of communicative systems. And one thing I like about this list is that, for the most part, these features are testable. They don't rely on intuition or subjectivity. Another is that they don't always paint human communication as unambiguously better. For example, feature 11 is called prevarication. That is, can you lie? Clearly yes in every human language, not so for many non-humans. And I can't help but think of my dog, who tries to play it cool when we're chatting to him, but he'll sit there and he'll not move anything, but his tail just keeps going. His tail is a form of communication that does not permit him prevarication, doesn't let him lie. Anyway, that's as quick as I could bear an overview of the material from this chapter. I think it's pretty fascinating stuff, and I hope you have fun digging into it. We have our usual tutorial on Thursday afternoon starting at 5 p.m. Alberta time. This will be the last tutorial before next week's quiz, and that's the last quiz before the end of term exam. And this quiz is going to cover writing, which we did last week, and animal communication from this week. I also want to remind everyone that you need to tell me about the topic you want to write about for your final paper. What resource are you going to use? Everyone has to use a different resource, so you got to let me know what it is so that we don't have any overlap. So far, only about a third of the class has been in touch with me on the discussion forum or directly through email. I haven't given you a deadline for notifying me, but I do need to approve your topic before you go ahead with the paper, because if you pick something that overlaps, or there's a couple of things that have come up that weren't really suitable resources, you don't want to spend time working on the paper and then realize too late that it's not a good resource. So let me know soon, and I'll see you in the tutorial.